What's up, everyone? So, of all the silly things that young Earth creationists believe, perhaps the most absurd is the talking snake tricking the first people into sinning and thus wreaking havoc on the natural world. And there's a very complicated scientific explanation to why this doesn't work, and it involves sophisticated biological knowledge and knowledge of anatomy and zoology and all these wonderful things. That objection is this: snakes can't talk, you idiots. They don't have a descended hyoid bone, they don't have the kind of complicated brain structure that facilitates the use of language, and they don't have conversations with people about the wisdom of some deity's dietary commands. I mean, for all of the smoke screens that creationists toss up trying to make the book of Genesis scientifically sound, they haven't put a good physiological explanation forward for an argument anyway for how snakes can talk. I mean, they love to point to the fact that little sexual spurs on the bodies of boas and so-called primitive snakes is evidence that the Bible accounts of snakes once having legs is true. But you'll never hear any creationist give physiological evidence for how a snake can talk. And perhaps I went too far in calling them idiots, but it's a really silly position to take. But in the absence of this, many creationists imply that the snake that tempted Eve was not just an ordinary snake, but really a satanically possessed snake or Satan in disguise, which the story never actually really implies. And I don't believe the ancient Jewish scribes taught that, but it has been inferred by a lot of commentators. But this presents all sorts of problems and really causes us to question not only the omniscience, but also the competence and character of the God of the Bible. Point one: how stupid is it to throw the most evil being in existence, who I remind you tried to lead a rebellion to take over the universe, into paradise, uh, into this paradise-like garden that you have created for the two beings you have created in your image, who are supposedly the pinnacle of your creation. Two beings who are innocent, who know no evil, no pain, and no suffering. That's like sitting in the park and just shrugging when you see a strange man who looks a lot like the guy on the 6 o'clock news who was a child abductor, chatting up your kids near the swings and offering them candy. That's pretty much what this is like. Point two: if this was not really a normal snake, but either a snake possessed by Satan or Satan in a different form, how is it just to punish every single snake that will ever exist from that point on? The snake was not a willing accomplice in this act. Its form was being used by another for nefarious purposes. It was being manipulated, or somebody was impersonating it. Yet God specifically puts a curse on all snake kind that takes away the use of their legs and ensures that there will always be enmity between humans and serpents. That's jacked up. That's just jacked up. And surely a being like the Abrahamic God, who is said to be just, or as Muslims say, the most merciful, could be more discerning and compassionate than that, right? I mean, that's the way I'm seeing it. Point three: if God allowed Satan into the garden and allowed him to tempt Eve because it was all part of his plan and he wanted it to happen, why would he be angry? Not only that, but if he has predestined this and through an action or active guiding allowed this to happen, then supposedly omnibenevolent Yahweh is actually responsible for the existence of evil and pain and suffering in the world. We can lay it directly at his feet, honestly, because he was either being irresponsible or, quite frankly, a horrendous monster. So that's the way it goes, reading Genesis 3. We can't get out of it without coming to the conclusion that the God of the Bible is either a woefully incompetent moron, terribly irresponsible, or a disgusting reprobate who's worthy of our scorn, not our praise. Take your pick.